Everybody, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. I'm trying a new format today where basically I'm trying to capture my podcast and my video channel content at the same time. So I've got my mic here all set up, and I use this for podcasting as well as for my Liberator rap project. And then I have my webcam here that I use for video. That's great for that, but it doesn't have the best mic in it for audio content. So this hopefully will be the ideal setup, and then that way I won't be leaving any of the channels out. Also, I do kind of have the sniffles a little bit. I have a little bit of a cold, so please forgive that. But I really wanted to discuss this with you today. Now I got a sniffle. There you go. Forgive that. So anyway, the midlife crisis in men, okay? I think that now that I'm going through perhaps some of that behavior that others might label or are starting to label as a quote-unquote midlife crisis, that I have some insight as far as what that could actually be. Let me give you an example, okay? So I'm 39 and a half. I'm going to be 40 years old soon, and I'm starting to get some interests into things that I thought I would never do, like motorcycle riding, okay? So this is something that for me, I was raised in some household that was very anxiety driven. It was an anxiety driven household. And unfortunately, a lot of Jewish households are like that. I was brought up in a Jewish household, as I've discussed many times. Had one of these Jewish moms who was just totally anxiety driven. And that means that the world's a terrifying place and you just don't do things. And, the world is a scary, scary place, and it's out to get you, and you just never would do a thing like getting on a motorcycle. And I kind of internalized a lot of those feelings. And why now do I feel that it's something that I want to do? So again, we've got to keep in mind, because I'm getting some of those little jeers and little observations from friends, family, coworkers that are like, oh, Devin's gone through his midlife crisis. It's a midlife crisis purchase, because I'm going to have that soon. Soon I'm going to have the motorcycle sitting in the garage. And that's the typical observation from people. And I'm telling you, that observation is wrong. It's not at all what people think it is. So here's the thing. The midlife crisis is defined, at least in our culture and by most, as a kind of an existential crisis where a guy is going, oh God, I need to recapture my youth somehow. I feel it slipping, and I need to do stereotypically youthful things or even risk-taking things. And last but not least, I need to prove my masculinity to other people. And that must be the only reason why the guy who is in this period of his life who is doing these things must be doing them. Now, motorcycling is not just one example. There's the guy who gets the Corvette at around that age. So 40, 50, maybe 55 or even 60. He gets the Corvette or the Ferrari. Or he takes up a new kind of risky sport. Maybe skydiving, maybe hang gliding, maybe hunting. He starts exploring new things that involve some risk. And because, God bless Rollo Tomasi, because he's always saying, really that we're living in a feminized culture. We're living in a culture where what he calls the female imperative or feminine imperative has become the cultural morality of the day. And then that perspective just becomes the normal perspective. And I'm really sick of this. It's like men are just the brunt of everybody's joke. And you start doing something that brings you satisfaction or makes you happy, and you get the midlife crisis. So you just can't win as a man because you do it when you're young. Let's say you ride that sport bike around when you're in your 20s. Oh, you're a mook, you're a this, you're a that, you're a, daredevil. And then you do it when you're older, a little bit older, and you got a midlife crisis. So just don't do that. Just do what we say. Do what we tell you to do. man as slave, really, is the modus operandi of the feminine imperative. You just live to serve whatever women say. So that's it. So here's the thing. So I told you what the popular consensus in our matriarchal feminist society in the Matrix is about that behavior and what I think it isn't. I'm saying I don't think it is that. So what is it? When am I going to tell you what it is? Well, here's what I think it is, or here's what I know it is from my own experience. You work so hard. I spent like close to 20 years of my life trying to build a career out of nothing and going through all this suffering, all this hell, some abusive relationships from women, feeling like I was obligated to like be the good guy and stick it out, even though I was getting no positive feedback or anything that I enjoyed out of the relationship. Because again, the feminine imperative tells you that you're bad for wanting a satisfying sex life, a little, feminine input, to be touched nicely and to be with someone who is feminine and treats you sweetly and helps to build up your ego. The feminists have turned that into an insult to women, where women are supposed to knock your balls around and bust your ego all day. And that's seen as commendable. And then these guys, these whipped husbands, they put up with it because they're told to. They're like, but I want to be right. I don't want to be politically incorrect. And I don't want to be lonely. So maybe it's the right thing to do. And then they go through that. Let's say they're married for 20 years. They sacrifice everything that they have for their wife, for their kids. Everything that has ever defined them gets sold, regarded as superfluous, as stupid, as immature, as toxically masculine. The Camaro that he owned that once turned his girlfriend on, now that they're married, becomes impractical and it's got to be sold. It's got to go away. There was an old commercial. I think it was for a car care product, I think. And it was literally that. It was in this commercial, the guy had, I think, a third gen Chevy Camaro sitting on the driveway, and his wife keeps trying to put a for sale sign on the car. And then he gets the Armor All or whatever, and he's doing a bunch of stuff to the interior with the Armor All or whatever the product is. And then it's glowing again. So in the next scene, the car's glowing again, and he takes the sign off of it. She's trying to put it on. He intercepts the sign and he throws it away or whatever. But the message, very, very sadly, in the modern American family or marriage situation is, as a man, the things that bring you joy personally don't matter. Don't matter. That's why I'm such an opponent of this this idea. I love Dave Ramsey. Like, I'm such a fan. I've got right here on my wall my last month of my debt snowball. I'm doing the Dave Ramsey plan. I love and admire Dave Ramsey, and I do what he says. But just like any philosopher, just like me or anyone else, you don't have to believe or agree with 100% of everything that they say. And to me, Dave Ramsey's no exception. And Dave Ramsey's really big on the government-sanctioned marriage. The merging of accounts. And if you want to know why marriages fail so often, I'm saying, my theory is that it is so much like when communist countries and socialist countries fail. Now you've got this big pot. You've got to have a fucking argument over every decision you make. And you lose your independence and she loses hers. Instead of it being a negotiation, instead of it being, well, my money's mine, your money's yours, and then we decide together what things are in fact in the collective agreement. Because there are, every libertarian economist and philosopher has said this. They said, no, it's not that there aren't things that we don't collectively come together for. It's that those need to be voluntary. We need to decide voluntarily, oh, well, this club you're joining, or if you're paying a subscription service to drive on a road or series of roads, or the wireless network, the mobile network that you're on, it's used collectively and you pay a membership fee, and that's a mutually understood voluntary agreement. And so I think that you with your partner would say, well, What's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. And there are those things that we share, and we're going to negotiate and agree upon perhaps those things that we're going to come together on, like your child, perhaps your child's education. If you were to put your child in a private school, you say, well, we'll pay 50%, or maybe I make a little more than my spouse. I'm going to pay 60% or 70 or 80. Maybe I'll pay 100% of it. You know, maybe I'll pay these utilities and my partner will pay those utilities, and we'll come together to decide on the things that we share as a part of our shared life. This business of sharing everything. Who's going to get the short end of the stick in that kind of arrangement? The man. Why? Why? Because the man is more traditionally independent and has the more esoteric kind of interests that involve toys. The natural child in all of us is our emotional selves. And if you're going to nurture that part of you, that's the part of you that likes working on cars. It should be expressed through the adult in you, as Bradshaw would say. But it's kind of hard to play without toys. You need tools. You need vehicles for your play. And the feminine imperative is really rigged toward what she perceives to be practicality, even though she violates that every time. Women get their hair done, and it can cost $400 or more to put those highlights in, and it's like a multi-stage process sometimes. And some guys might object to that. By the way, where's her midlife crisis when she's doing all that? It's not a midlife crisis. It's just seen as beautification. It's like, well, actually, I personally think it's great when women are engaged in beautification, because that helps us be attracted to them, and that helps the relationship. But anyway, if in one of these communist or socialized, marriage arrangements, state adjudicated, state enforced relationships, she regards his interests and the things he wants as superfluous and wasteful and immature and childish and boyish. And she goes and gets her hair done and her nails done, and it costs $600 a month. Some guys have voiced an objection to that. She goes, oh, but don't you want me to look good for you? I'm doing it for you. These arguments just kind of keep coming up. Like time and time again, relationship after relationship after relationship. And yet we keep doing those things, even though they perform very poorly. They don't work. They're dysfunctional. John Bradshaw had the best definition of dysfunctional that I've ever heard. Well, it means it doesn't work. Dysfunctional is the opposite of functional. Dysfunctional means it doesn't work. I really like how I found freedom in an unfree world philosophy, which is that, well, the relationship is there as long as love is there. You can't sign on a contract that you're going to love each other forever. It just can't be done. Especially considering the way things and people change in their lives. The world moves a lot more quickly than it used to. So not to digress, but what ends up happening in the labeled midlife crisis for most of us men is you go, oh my God, somewhere along the line, I forgot to live. In my case, I had been a very bad steward of money, never saved, had a really rough time. It was partially my fault, not always, but that's why you save, is because of things beyond your control that happen to you or could happen to you, like being between jobs and things like that. Now I have a great job, but man, did I go through hell to get it. And you go, man, there is a really big need for me to experience some joy in my life and live life and have some new experiences that make me feel good as a man, which women don't always appreciate or understand. I can't even believe myself right now that I'm actually going through with the motorcycle thing, because I will tell you, 1 year ago, less than that, I would have told you, you couldn't pay me enough to get on a motorcycle, man. Too dangerous, too dangerous. And then something clicked in me all of a sudden. It was the weirdest thing. When I hit this moment where I thought, but I'd really enjoy it. See, the excuse that I made before was, I'm not going to get on a motorcycle because knowing me, the way I love speed and vehicles and all that, because I'm a huge car guy too, I told myself I could fall in love with it. And that would be a bad thing because I could get injured. And you go, wait a minute. Let's follow the logic here. Something, screwing with my little beanie here. Something in my life could bring me a lot of joy, but there's some danger associated with it. Therefore, what? Don't do it? Therefore, don't do it. What kind of a philosophy for life is that? And by the way, I'm not prescribing it. I'm not telling you to go out and ride a motorcycle because Stone's telling you go do it. You make your own damn choices and weigh your own risks. I assume no responsibility. But my personal kind of revelation on this whole thing. So I went, wait a minute, but that could be a really tremendous source of pleasure for me in my life. And me as a man, I'm actually craving a little bit of danger. That's something that women have trouble understanding. Why? Well, because we're built for that. A big reason why we have this lost boy thing and this masculinity issue right now, which is not the same in my definition as the feminazi SJW definition of toxic masculinity. My definition is no, masculinity is good, and it only becomes toxic when it's repressed. Our culture, our feminine imperative-based culture represses it. Then it becomes toxic, okay? Totally different definition. But anyway, we're built as men to face danger. By doing that, we created the greatest, most free, most, well, the free part's debatable, but the safest, most reliable, most welcoming, most tolerant culture the world has ever seen. And with that has created decadence. That's the dark side to conquering this continent, building these incredibly stable modes of existence, very comfortable lives, is that we might face rot. That movie Fight Club is kind of about that. That movie is about, and I'm not advocating the things they do in that film because it's kind of nihilistic. It's a very nihilistic film. But those guys in that Fight Club were becoming so damaged and so disillusioned by the nihilism that they wanted to introduce chaos into their lives just to have a feeling of meaning. The way they went about it was really stupid. You know, they're terrorists, basically. But being a man means that you have a relationship with danger and assume the responsibility of managing that danger, not just avoiding things. Not just, ooh, no, not going to do it, not what? To not do something because there's some danger involved. Every time you soccer moms get in your minivan, even with all the airbags, the crumple zones, the seat belts and the steel cages and everything, you are, in fact, doing a cost-benefit analysis and a risk analysis every single time. Every time you cross the street, every time you step in the shower where it could slip, you know, every time you do anything, there's some risk management, even if you're aware of it or not. So part of the sensation that you get on a motorcycle, part of the exhilaration of driving it, comes with the fact that you're unprotected and comes with the fact that there's some danger involved. Right now, I'm learning how to ride one, how to manage the risk. So, so much for this theory that, oh, well, you just must be stupid if you're riding one of those around. It's like, no, actually, if you're riding responsibly, there's a lot of intelligence that goes into it because you've decided to do this because you enjoy it. It's not all risk and no reward. There has to be some reward or nobody would do it. If it was all risk and just no benefit, and oh, yeah, well, that would be the Chicken Little approach to those things and to life in general, and especially motorcycling would be, well, there's no reward in that, just straight up recklessness. But we know that there are millions of people who love it and maybe even feel that they can't live without it, that it's a part of their lives, their identities. What that means is that there's just a tremendous benefit. So if there are tremendous benefits and tremendous risks, and you're determined to do it, then that means, as I'm doing, you learn every way you can to try to mitigate the risk, knowing that you can't eliminate it. And that's actually a very mature thing to do, is to say, well, this brings me a lot of happiness and a lot of pleasure in my life, so I'm going to embrace that risk, maybe even enjoy it a little bit. And they're all, the gear that you get, the airbag vest, I'm actually going to invest in one of those, the helmet, all those things. There, as you can see, when you look at motorcyclists, there are varying degrees of people's comfort level with risk and whether they want to just have more of a devil-may-care attitude where they're just like, well, they call them squids, where you don't wear any safety equipment at all, t-shirt, shorts, maybe even sometimes not even a helmet, because they just want that full sensation. They want to be casual about it, and they just want to accept all the risks. Then there are those riders who want to be as prepared as possible if they were to get hit or fall off of it. And they really, really want to be sure that they're as protected as possible while enjoying it. And that's kind of the category I fall into. So I really resent this label of people who point and laugh when you start to do things. People are starting to notice, that are close to me, as I said, coworkers, friends, whatever, that I'm doing things. I'm taking interest in things that could be seen as more traditionally masculine. They're going, Devin's going through his midlife crisis. And I just fucking hate that. Like, fuck you and your definitions. When really, it comes at the tail end of suffering and working and trying so hard and realizing, oops, I forgot to live. I forgot how to play. And if you really want to be happy in life and not crust over, not become some old, bitter, piece of crap, because I believe that aging is actually optional. Your body might age, but your mind and your emotions don't have to go with it. You don't have to act old. Just because you're fucking getting old doesn't mean you have to give into it mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I've noticed that about people, that they're not just old, but you can tell the way they're hunched over and walking, they forgot to stretch. They gave up their life to the bonbons and the sofa chair. And somewhere in life, they gave up about stretching. You remember that, Grandpa? You used to stretch. There are elderly people who don't walk around with osteoporosis and aren't hunched over like that. They dress old. You just look like shit. Like, what? Why are you, Some older guys are cool. Like, they just look cool. They kind of got the Johnny Cash thing going on. They're like, yeah, I'm old. I'm going to rock this. Like, I've got experience. That's the elderly guy that I want to be. You don't have to give into it and get all crusty. It's like these guys have defined their lives as joyless. So this epiphany that I had is, oh man, I just kind of forgot that life was supposed to be an adventure and was supposed to be fun. And now if I'm actually being a good steward of my money, maybe I get to enjoy it a little bit and do the things that are important to me. To me as a man, like, that exhilaration is actually part of life. It's reaffirming. It makes you feel brave and masculine to be harnessing the risk and embracing the danger. There's something, I think, spiritual about that. To say, well, you know what? A feminine imperative, you're wrong. I'm not going to live the Oedipal mother life, the life my Oedipal mother prescribed for me, or your wife, because it could be both, your wife, because she has the same kind of Oedipal feeling about things, that life is about avoiding risk at all costs. At all costs. If something's risky, you don't do it. So how masculine is that? More masculine attitude is bring it on. And we recognize we can be intelligent about it. We know what the dangers are. We know that I could get, T-boned, or this guy could turn left in front of me, and I could get rear-ended, and you live with that awareness so that you can mitigate the risk. And that's really the only way to live with anything. I think the telltale sign of like an Oedipal mother is she's got cash stuffed into her mattress because she's too scared of runs on banks, and she thinks banks are dangerous, and she's just terrified of everything. Terrified of the world, terrified to invest her money. It's disgusting. It's no way to live. The 50-year-old guy who buys the red Porsche, okay? That's another stereotypical midlife crisis thing. Again, so people with this disgusting, postmodern, hypnotized, brainwashed, cell phone addicted mentality that's completely defined by the feminine imperative have optics on that, right? They see that 50-year-old guy, and he goes into the BMW or the Porsche dealership or Ferrari dealership or Chevy dealership for that Corvette or whatever, and he gets this obtrusive, like almost obnoxious, bright colored, not always, but stereotypically the red Porsche, right? Tim Ferriss makes fun of that. He says, oh, it's the fat middle-aged guy in the red BMW convertible. That's not what this is about. Oh, okay. Well, hold on a second, Tim. Hold on. What is going on in the male psychology that drives us to do those things? Well, part of it's just enjoyment. As I said, just that we love toys. That's a part of the playful expression of being a man. But there's another big part of it, which you probably guessed, which is to be successful with women, especially younger, more beautiful women. So think about it this way. After decades of brainwashing and henpecking, and, this guy, again, I'm setting the stage for you with an example character to represent the victim of this midlife crisis accusation. So let's say we have this guy, we'll call him whatever, Hector, okay? So Hector gets married, and he's 30 years old when he gets married. And his wife, slowly but surely, she starts to exert her dominance over the household. He has to sell and get rid of everything that he's ever liked. Sacrifices his whole life for their household, the kids they have. He puts his little suit and tie on and goes to work every day while she quits her job to raise the kids. He does that for the next 20 years. So he's 50 years old. At 50 years old, his wife decides she needs to find herself because she's always wanted to be a yoga instructor, and she's learned, of course, she always knew, that the courts can extort her husband for alimony payments for the rest of his life, because in most states, that's what she would be entitled to if they were married beyond the 10-year point. So she divorces him, takes half his shit, drags him through the mud in this heartbreaking divorce, and then she goes her merry way. The court gavel down. He's got to pay her $2,000 a month. So she goes, gets a roommate somewhere, and lives some hippy-dippy weird life. And he gets to start over. And he sits there, and he goes, wow. 50 years old, he goes, wow. At that point, I wasn't even sexually attracted to her that much anymore, but I was emotionally attached. And I really lost touch with the things that men define as the best in life, and fucking is a big part of it. The company of and having sex with beautiful women, that really makes men tick quite a bit. And he goes to the Porsche dealership to purchase essentially the equivalent of peacock feathers. That's what that is. So that he can feel, because he misses the feeling, or maybe never had the feeling of being desired by women that he would consider desirable. You see, there's a psychology. There's a whole life story behind all this, because most men know what it's like to be in your 20s, be in your 30s, and desire those beautiful women. And what are they doing? They're being hypergamous and looking up to the rich guy or the guy with the perfect abs or whatever, and feeling like you're missing out. And so what have a lot of men done? Well, hopefully, is invest in their career, done whatever they can to do well for themselves. A lot of us do what we're supposed to do, or what we feel is expected, which is wife and kids, And then you're like, I'm just working. I feel like I'm working as a slave. Just go to work, give the money over to the wife, give it over to the kids. And I'm not saying that's not important. But whatever you do, don't lose yourself. I wouldn't want to be with a woman or have a family if I don't matter. If those things that I enjoy don't matter. Like, what are you teaching your kids? What kind of role model, what kind of example are you setting for your sons and daughters as a man if you're not a person yourself? You're just doing what is expected of you and you don't set an example. I would want my kids, if and when I do have kids one day, I want them to see dad like, oh, he's cool. Like, he's into cool stuff. He's got the Harley. He does the things. He goes shooting. He has friends. He has interests. And what that communicates to them is that the world is a place for you to play and enjoy and do those things. I really, really I hate and resent the state of the modern family where the guy's individual life counts for nothing. So, feminazis who are listening to this, I hate to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you something you already know. The guy who is 50 years old, who gets the red Corvette or the Ferrari or the Porsche or whatever, is doing it because after all those decades of getting kicked around, he goes, fuck it, I want to get laid and I want to see that beautiful thing in my bed. I want to see that next to me and I want it now. And why not? So we can push this equalism. That's this ideology that means everybody needs to be the same. It's not the same as equality, because equality is a relative term. It means like, well, equal rights, yes. Like my right to life isn't more than a woman's right to life. But equalism means we have to do whatever we can to make the sexes the same. We're not the same. Or equalism as applied to incomes. Equalism is the quest to make all incomes the same. Ugh. And that's really what they're after, isn't it? Whenever they bitch about income inequality, it's like, well, what are you after? Well, to make all incomes the same, because that's not fair. No, it's perfectly fucking fair. That's called freedom, you dumb fucking asshole. Okay. Now, midlife crisis in the kind of the more traditional sense, where the guy is like literally having I don't know what to do with my life, and I don't know what I did with my life. That does happen. What I'm saying is, I resent the label. I resent when people go, oh, that guy's doing these things, therefore he's going through a midlife crisis, when you don't know that. It's a very negative label for a guy who has sacrificed and worked his whole life up until he's middle age, and then goes, oh shit, I want to have some fun and do some things that I enjoy. And I don't really care what PC culture really has to fucking say about it. PC culture frowns upon the thought of me wanting to get young pussy, but I know deep down in my heart that that's what I desire, and I just don't fucking care anymore. Motorcycle riding, I want to experience some exhilaration. I want to welcome some danger, because in this postmodern culture, things are so decadent that you can literally die from boredom. Die from it. Like, experience is so fucking cookie cutter. It's so template. Everything is so strip mallish and just weak that you might want to welcome some danger in your life to feel like a man. That's how I feel about it right now. Danger is something you flirt with and manage and have a relationship with. You don't want to avoid it at all costs like a pussy. That's not a masculine life. And again, I'm not telling you therefore go ride motorcycles. That's what I found. So it's a major transformation for me. It's a major change. And most of what I've heard from my family, my friends, my coworkers, has been either, I've had maybe 2 encouraging people in my life being like, yeah, man, you should do it. You'll love it. It's a great experience. A little dangerous, but you'll love it. I remember doing it. I've gotten that from 2 people in my life. 2. Everybody else is, that's too dangerous, man. Be careful. What does that even mean, be careful? The next person who tells me that, I'm going to tell them, you know what? I'm going to do you one better than this meaningless advice of be careful, otherwise known as be afraid, be very afraid is what they're saying. I'll tell you, you know what? I'm going to do you one better. I'm investing in my training. I'm investing in my training and learning how to manage the risk intelligently, and investing in my gear, which goes a lot farther than these ninnying little idiot Oedipal comments, be careful, which just means I feel scared for you. Bullshit. It's Master Kent's bullshit. Now, the real midlife crisis, where a guy has an existential meltdown because he feels that he wasted his life and is having some kind of dizzying spell about his mortality. That's a really dark thing. My father went through that. That doesn't manifest itself in buying cars and new hobbies. It manifests itself in like an anxiety-ridden depression, otherwise known as a panic attack, which my father went through. That was the most horrifying thing in my life, and I was at a critical stage. So I was like, 14? So that's a adolescent stage. That's when a teen boy really needs a strong masculine figure to be really engaged in his life and give him a lot of help and a lot of insight. Help him break the Oedipal connection with his mother, get him out doing things, because that's a tough transition, right, into manhood, and that's where a lot of things can go wrong. And that's when my dad had a complete meltdown. Like, he's a failed business owner, and my mom had been there with him through one narcissistic startup company after the next, and then this one. He wanted her to take a second mortgage out on the house to fund another failed business venture after he'd already failed at it 8 times. And I'm not saying you're going to be a failure if you start a business, but with him, it was deeply narcissistic and deeply dysfunctional. And my mom said no, rightfully so. And they were both co-signers on the mortgage. So he said no, and that was nothing but fights and chaos in the house over that. And he just completely fell apart. Like he stopped dressing himself. He stopped wearing like shirts. He stopped showering. He slept in all day. He'd go to the bank. Like he would go to the bank with no shirt on, and no shoes. He would wear just like shorts because he was so depressed. He wouldn't even clothe himself, wouldn't bathe himself. Had meltdowns. Would have emotional meltdowns in the car, was getting on Prozac and shit, which made everything worse. And, what do you think that does to, like my brother and I were these 2 teen boys, and your father is doing this. And my mom, good little codependent trooper that she was, is just trying to keep everything together, going to work and she was a teacher, so she's going to work and taking us to our things and just pretending like things are just normal when everything is falling apart. That has nothing to do with the things I described earlier. You cannot point your finger at a guy who is doing well and is successful, but he isn't just a slave to his wife or a slave to society and going, everything that she decides is practical is practical. A wife decides that having 50 pairs of shoes is practical, but a Camaro that he owns is not practical, and she goes to war with it because she's threatened by her guy having any interest at all. I will never forget. Some of you guys are too young to remember the Super Nintendo, right? One of the greatest consoles ever made, right? Super NES. And I had one of these. It was around that time, same time, right? I was like 14-ish. And we'd always go to, like a lot of Jewish households, we have Christians in our house, in our family as well. So we celebrate Hanukkah, Christmas. We have Christmas get-togethers, things like that. So we'd go to my mom's brother's place for Christmas. We'd stay there a couple days. And I'd always be bored out of my mind. Because I was fucking 13, 14, bored out of my mind. Bunch of adults around, nothing fun. So I thought, I'm going to bring my Super Nintendo with me. I'm plugging it into the TV and we can play games and I can have it. And that was like a great thing that I did. But my cousin was recently married. He was in his mid-20s or something, late 20s. And he'd just gotten married. He married a single mom. There you go. And every month that went by after the marriage, this woman gained 10 pounds. So by the time a year had gone around, she gained like 100 pounds. It was really awful. But anyway, I was supposed to sleep on the couch in the family room, and I'll never forget my cousin. He kept me up all night playing. I had Mortal Kombat 2, and he's playing it. And his brother, my older cousin, was like, Devin looks tired. Why won't you let him sleep? Because my fucking cousin wouldn't let me sleep. He's like, oh, he can sleep tomorrow. And he's obsessing over this game. And he told me the reason why is because, well, I wanted a video game system, but my wife won't let me have one. You know, like, what the fuck is up with that? My wife won't let me. What the fuck? What the fuck? You know, and guys they make these horrible, like, concessions. Deals with the devil. A guy will do anything to be with a woman. It's so fucking sad. It's like, well, I don't want to be lonely, and this woman was willing to marry me, and she looked good at the time, and so, but, it's my family. I got to do right by my family, and then there's something that I really want for myself, and she said no. Well, that's why she said no. She said no because what she's telling you is you don't matter. I matter. And then what's good for the kids just becomes an extension of her, what she wants. Because she likes spending money on that shit. She likes spending money on clothes for the kids and this for the kids and that for the kids. Anything you want for yourself is selfish. Even though, like, yeah, there's no selfishness in her nonsense. So, the midlife crisis accusation and things like this. Like, so, this same cousin, he gave up his whole life and did everything he possibly could do to please this woman for going on, I guess, 15 years, something like that. And so very more than that. So recently, anyway, they're going through a divorce. She walked up to him one day, her fat ass self, and told him, I don't love you anymore and I could do better. Right after she went back to school. So she goes back to a school for her master's degree, and they start filling her head full of this corporate feminazi crap. She gets high on her own bullshit. And literally after he sacrificed everything, worked a bunch of shit jobs, he's car salesman and doing everything he can for his family. She waddles up to him one day and goes, I don't love you anymore and I could do better. Like, you've been around any reflective services lately, sweetheart? Not really. But anyway, so now he gets to go through a divorce. So maybe now he can buy a video game system, So that, him recapturing that youthful energy, the youthful spirit of being a man, which are just the things guys like. Like, he likes the video games, Mortal Kombat. Hey, Mortal Kombat 11's coming out soon, and I'm excited about it. Mortal Kombat has things in it that guys like. It has fictionalized reenactments of violence that we get to kind of play in that space, right? Because that's what makes us men. We're built to do violence, not that we should or are all the time, but it's attractive to us. This is a part of our makeup. That's what testosterone is for, partially. It's like fucking and killing. So if you get to play in that space, we get a catharsis. That's why it's so popular. The academic types and the feminazis are like, oh, it's glorifying violence. Meh. I mean, do you have any idea what would happen if you did away with any and all fictitious violence? Like, society would fall apart, So my point is, let's say that my dear cousin here, he has to go and get his own little apartment and start over. He could perhaps he starts to do some of these things. He gets a muscle car and he gets a PlayStation or Xbox, and he starts playing Mortal Kombat after he's been deprived of everything that brought him joy as an individual for the last, 20 fucking years of his life. That's where it comes from. So the midlife crisis, I'm not saying that the existential, what do I do with my life, oh my God thing doesn't exist, but I'm telling you that the things that society labels as that are not that. You got it wrong. When you go, oh, look at this guy, he's 50 and he bought a video game system and a motorcycle and a this and a that, and he's doing these things and he's changing and he's adopting these more stereotypical youthful behaviors, and only in a feminized society would they say, therefore, that is laughable and stupid and bad and toxic. Fuck you. Fuck you. I really hate and resent this ridicule. of men. And yeah, being a man, but also where the shaming comes in to play in your sexual lives, right? So it's like, well, I'm going to invest in those things that might bring me some success with women, the things that I find attractive, which is youth and beauty. Maybe, like with my cousin, after you've been a good little soldier and living without that for the last 20 years of your life, because she, again, by gaining the weight, by not looking after her appearance, by wearing sweatpants every day, by not prettying herself up for you, by acting like a man instead of a woman, she's telling you, fuck you and your preferences. You don't matter. You're my slave. And throwing away all your toys and your things. I had one friend, my best friend growing up, and when he turned 25, he found himself some single mother to marry. He was 25 and she was 38. And he could have done a lot better. But he was raised, you be a good little soldier, you do right by these needy women. He got married. I never heard from him again because she had to control his whole life. He wasn't allowed to have friends. He wasn't allowed to have activities. She was even jealous of his relationship with his father and his mother. So they had to go. She manufactured in him that she had some beef with, she was such a narcissist little bitch. It's like, she had some beef with her parents because, well, they didn't approve of her. Well, of course they didn't approve of her. Would you want your 25-year-old son marry some 38-year-old woman with 2 kids? They wanted him to, have a real life, have his kids be his kids. So she couldn't let that go, and so he had to resent them too. He didn't even go to his own mother's funeral. How sad is that? So pathetic. And he's convinced himself that he's been a good little boy. So, here I am. I have not been through those things. I have not been married, come close a couple times. The last one, thank God, didn't want to get married. So thank you for that. That would have been a huge mistake. So I was spared in that regard. But I've still been through, the hyper controlling woman who had to control everything, the way that I looked, the way that I dressed. They're really big on that. Everything that I wanted to do had to pass the wall of scrutiny. And I have also been through things that really didn't involve women, just the struggle to have a good career coming out of university and not having that count for what I wanted to do, or not have that manifest in a job. Or struggling through jobs that were work that was sporadic. Even in technology, sometimes it can be very sporadic and ride the financial cycle a little bit. And then you go, my God, my young male life has been a big wall of anxiety and survival reactions and very little wholesome fun. And you go, oh my God, I do want to experience those things that I value. And what makes me feel masculine, society doesn't get to tell me what it should be, which they're doing all the time through all this mockery and henpecking, and yes, even safety. You got to read the Eric Peters blog when he talks about the safety standards in cars, because here's the thing. My first car was an 85 Honda Accord. I purchased it with my, I had savings bonds from my bar mitzvah that I took out prematurely to buy this car from a family friend who sold it to me for $995. She bought that car, under $1,000. She was the original owner. She still had the paperwork from when she first bought the car. She bought it new off the showroom floor for $8,000. That's a Honda Accord, by the way. So it's a step up from the Civic. Are there any cars on the market today that you could pay cash for $8,000 new? So the state, these regulation layering institutions have said and are saying, you don't have the right to decide your own risks. We have to protect you from yourself. You've got to wear seatbelts. You've got to have airbags. You've got to have crumple zones. The A-pillar on the car needs to be that thick. Eric Peters talks about that, where on one such interview, my 2012 Scion XB, because it's post some of these regulations, the A-pillar, that's between the windshield and the front passenger mirror, the driver's side mirror, they've mandated in the regulations that it needs to be thicker so that the car can stand up under the weight of being flipped upside down. So they're going to protect you. Here's the problem. It's so damn thick that you can fit an entire person on a bicycle in that space. So I've nearly hit and killed pedestrians. So much for safety. Government regulators don't know shit. And the attraction to that is that we're still really not fully in our adult selves, at least at a spiritual level. We look to the government to protect us. The government acts like an Oedipal mother. No, you gotta be safe. No, you gotta be safe. As if to say that there's nothing more important in life than safety. Well, why be alive then? What about the experience of living, which you're missing out on when you get a car and you just wall yourself up in it and you can't hear the outside world. People are texting while they're driving. And motorcycling is the opposite. You're fully engaged in the experience. That's something I find very admirable about the hobby itself, is that they go for rides just for the experience of riding. I remember when I was a kid, I just realized this the other day, that there's a lost American pastime. There are things that Americans used to do that we just don't do anymore. Like going for a drive. So this is now in the 80s. My mom had this big Ford station wagon. They don't really make those anymore. Station wagons. No airbags. You know, very safe vehicle. Had a fucking V8 in it. And it could seat 3 in the front, 3 in the middle seat, and 1, 2, 3, 4. There was a way back. So this station wagon could seat 10 people. Unbelievable. And we would do things like, let's just go for a drive. So what that was is you just like roll the windows down. You pile your kids in the car and you would just go. We go up the coast. We lived in California, where I grew up. And you just look at the scenery and you just end up wherever you ended up. There's no GPS, no phone nagging you, none of that. Just scenery, just watch it go by. It was an American pastime. It's just to be free, just to experience. There's a diner. Let's pull over here. The spontaneity of life. And of course the regulators hate that. They hate motorcycles because there's risk. That's the whole point. Because life involves risk and managing risk and having a relationship with risk so that you can be free. Same thing with firearms. Well, firearms are weapons. Someone could abuse or misuse the use of firearms and try to kill someone with them. Yeah. But the ironic twist is the more people that you give that freedom, the safer society becomes, because there's a lot more good people that will protect themselves out of self-interest and their neighbors than there are evil sociopaths. So, like, all of these things are about looking out for what you as a man know make you feel good. And after a certain number of years of sacrifice, of perhaps struggling or failed relationships or being controlled in relationships or whatever, you just want to go, you know what, damn it, like I know what makes me feel good, god damn it. Fuck your judgments. Midlife crisis, and these things, by the way, I can't even tell. Could never tell my parents because they would go to war against the motorcycle. They wouldn't just say like, oh, well, we're worried about you and how dangerous that is. But if that's what you love, whatever. I mean, we don't like the idea. But no. You don't understand. They would wage a holy war. And here I'm a 40-year-old. Like, come on, fuck you. Like, if you're not old enough to make those decisions by 40, you got something wrong here. And I'm not saying you have to do that. So, you're realizing that being completely risk avoidant is not a good recipe for feeling like a man or feeling masculine at all. Nor is ignoring your own, like sexual needs and those kind of things. So if I had the money, would I go buy the Porsche or the Ferrari or the Lambo right now so I could pick up on the hottest thing? Yeah, you bet I would. I'm a man. There's so much shame. We live in a culture that is completely shaming of male desires, completely shaming of the way male psychology, the way we think, the way we enjoy the risk and toys and danger and women. It just shames it to death. And you got to wonder, how the hell did we get here? If you think our culture denotes progress by any means of, you're full of yourself. All right, so that's all I got for today, and I really hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.